Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to Sensical Gibberish, a podcast by two friends, Yaku and Octavio. I myself being Octavio, and to which this podcast discusses topics relatable to young adults, from gaming to childhood memories. So please join us and enjoy the next hour of gibberish that is sensical. Thank you.
All right. So
Okay.
our topic for tonight is basically old games and games that have that nostalgic thing, but also how games have changed, obviously, and what you probably do not see in games anymore. It's a very loaded topic, but I mean, obviously, you can go into different directions with it. But
And I guess we're jumping straight into the topic of it. Okay, yeah, let's get into
yeah,
it, I suppose. But like you introduced, it's basically nostalgic. Like we're going through the nostalgic classes, putting
yeah.
that on, looking back at our childhood. Like what are things we could remember? And I mean we're still young, so but the change that's happened between when we in our the games in our childhood till now, they've been vastly different.
Oh man, and 20 years is a very long time for gaming.
Well, I mean when you say 20 years, okay, it's more like 15. Okay.
Yeah, okay, true. We started actually gaming 15, I guess you could say 15 years ago. Um, or yeah, I think for me it was around 15 years ago I was actually becoming a gamer, even though I wasn't gaming as
Well,
much.
even before becoming a gamer, we still played some games and we had some expectation of games and things we would regularly see, before we actually had it as we followed a lot of the games back then. Even before then, I think we
Yeah,
were fully consciously aware of those things.
yeah, like with at friends' houses, for example. If you're like at a friend's house, they had a game, they had like a PlayStation 2. Well, in my case, it was PlayStation 2, and then our rich friends, I guess you could say, they had a PlayStation 2, and I remember, yeah, seeing that for the first time. My mind was blown. I remember them playing Ratchet and Clank. I loved Ratchet and Clank on PlayStation 2. That was like the first. I guess you could maybe say wow experience for me, but it actually started before that, to be honest. Um, or maybe it was actually more or less around the same time because I had a TV game in the same time, more or less, when they had that PlayStation 2. Obviously,
Uh,
the rich kids are gonna have a PlayStation 2. I'm gonna have a TV game, and yes, that means I got a TV game late in terms of the whole technological race because the PlayStation 2 was out, but Yaku got a TV game.
well,
So
I remember those TV games you're talking about. I mean, we basically had they're Chinese stores because they used to sell a lot of products from China that they directly imported. And they used to have
yeah,
those ones for quite cheap, and they played cartridges instead of discs. So I
yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
that's the same one you're talking about as well. Those ones that
It
played
was
cartridges.
It was exactly that. It was cartridges you inserted. You would like blow the cartridge if it was giving you issues, and then you like put it in. I played games like Duck Hunt. I played Super Mario Brothers.
Oh,
I played some
uh,
old. I played some old Tarzan game, which
I
was
think I
like
know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
I think it was like the PlayStation 1 side-scroller Tarzan game.
Oh man, that brings back memories. The
Yeah, I played
cartridges
it
I
those
even
times.
had, like one of the first cartridges games I had from there didn't even have like Super Mario or anything. It had like these Olympics games, and
Yes,
it was actually
that is
quite a popular one, like a circus kind of game as well.
I had that
Like,
too. I remember now. Now that you mentioned that Olympics and athletics, whatever you call it, I had that. Yeah, I had that as well. I definitely played that as well. Yeah.
so that was basically one of my first forays into gaming from a
Oh,
very young age. But to
I,
be fair, or not to be fair, sorry, to say, I actually did start later on. I owned a PlayStation 1
mm,
for a brief period. So I definitely started a bit earlier than the PlayStation 2, and I started directly from PlayStation 1. But those cartridges, they were, the start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The first time I played on a PlayStation 1 was actually very late in my life, because like my I was helping my parents um move and everything, and then I dug up like a PlayStation 1 that was my brother's. And I was like, well, damn, okay, PlayStation 1 and everything. And we played like the very first Medal of Honor on PlayStation 1. And that was a
Man,
very nostalgic trip. Me being like 20 years old and playing PlayStation 1 and playing Medal of Honor, like the very first one, and like taking a trip back.
well, to give a bit more context though, like I was the one who primarily grew up a console gamer, while you grew up more PC gaming. So, not to give the idea that you grew up playing with a lot of PlayStations or Xboxes, you primarily stayed on PC though.
Yes, but before my PC days, or before I was exposed to PC or introduced, I should say, is I was playing those PlayStation games from my at my friends' houses. I was playing those TV games, which, as you know, you were using controllers as well. It wasn't anything like PC. Um,
Yeah,
but also, when I say the PlayStation 1 nostalgia kicked in or whatever, it was more about the games and how the games looked, how the games were made, and how what
uh,
the effect that games had on you as a kid. And that's what I'm
yes,
talking about, whether it's console or PC or whatever. So obviously, I've never played PlayStation 1 or Medal of Honor, the very first one, before that day when I dug up that PlayStation 1. But
yeah,
then that the principle of that nostalgic feeling came back, and I just got
uh,
that nostalgia, where it just felt like, damn, this is like those old games, and this is when games are so simple, and the graphics and just the whole feel
yeah,
of the controller. And this was like, yeah, this was back in the day, and I didn't even play a PlayStation 1 back then. So it's like a thing that it's a thing that just it 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 just is something that just goes across all consoles, PCs, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just that
mm.
nostalgic thing.
No, I definitely see what you're saying as well. But I think also, like, like specifically for those who grew up on console, there's also just an added step to that where it's like it's divided so heavily between generations, obviously, because if something came out on a PC, um, that that would be a difference between like a PS1 and PS2 generation. You wouldn't think too much. You would think more about the game, like you're talking about now. But for people of consoles, they would solely divide that in their mind between PS1 or PS2 and older. But specifically to dig on on what you're saying with the games itself, like yeah, that's something that transcends whatever platform you were playing on. Because I mean, uh, those games that we started off with, they were about 20 years old by the time we started playing them. So it wasn't even exactly our generation of games as well. And hearing those 8-bit sounds and it didn't matter, because back then I didn't know how old those games were, but to me they were just fun. They were just something I looked forward to coming home and booting up and just having fun with.
Yeah, I mean, it was later in our teenage years when we started hearing about the Americans talking about Nintendo, and Americans talking about those games that we experienced at like that age, but then we realized how old those games actually were. And then they were talking about, yeah, the game when that Nintendo game was released like in the 1980s, and that Nintendo game was like released in the early 90s. And then I think, well, for me at least, then it kicked in where I was like, damn, okay, that was not actually a game that released in my childhood. I just experienced it very late.
Yeah. Well, for me, I realized much earlier, like way before my teens. But there's one reason for that specifically. And um, I never had a PC really growing up. My parents had one for a while, and then we got like a real proper one, quite late into my life. But my uncle always had PCs. And I remember he once gave it to, um, or my family once arranged with him to get a PC back then, and I was still quite young. And they installed onto that PC. I think the name is called MAME, MAME, which is basically
Yes.
like an arcade simulator. And it was
Mm.
during then that I learned of a lot of the old games, even something as simple as Pong to Super Mario. I learned how old those games were, but then I basically had that whole library to play with and so on. And that came after the cartridge days. So that's also when I got a true sense of, okay, these are actually old games. And I realized, because back then I had to set the controls. I basically had to map it like to the old, like as how to it be in the old controllers now to the keyboard. And then that's when I first realized, okay, wow, these games are old. And I saw that because that arcade simulator, it had like 20 to 30 years year range in between games. I could go to this one game, and here it is in the most simplest of pixels, and it's a game.
Yeah.
And like I scroll down 2 games later, and I'm busy playing Double Dragon or something. Like even then, I could just see how old and how things have changed even before my time. So it was quite a yeah, it was actually quite an experience.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. I mean, going back to those games, which I mean, well, I mean, the arcade still had a lot of those games, or some of those games, but or more games from that era, I should say. But yeah, I definitely also I know what you're talking about with MAME. MAME was a very fun way to experience those games again, definitely. And yeah, with PC, obviously, I think maybe with PC, the shift. I think PC drove the shift of what games can be.
Hmm.
Because the variety of games that released on PC compared to that of console was way more. But I think it's just because of people's knowledge in terms of what they can do with games and how they can create games and the technology they can put into a game's whole framework. And then you started seeing all these, well, granted, games that probably won't be fun on console, like strategy games, for example. If I'm thinking, um, me personally, from what I know and everything, Command and Conquer, which was like the driving strategy brand from like the 1990s, and that was a big thing. That's just one example of a game that is perhaps better tailored to PC than console. It will probably not be very playable or very fun on a console anyway. But it was definitely one of those games where people was like, damn, okay, this genre is a lot of fun. It's getting a lot of attention. It's getting very popular, and this can work. And then you have a genre which is basically pushing PC gaming forward. And Command and Conquer was just one example of a game that did that, which basically helped birth a whole new genre. And
Mm.
with the not the console, but I mean the other old games we just spoke about, when you think about the whole thing of 3D graphics, and which was still 2D graphics back then, and all these things, 3D graphics alone opened up a whole new world for gaming, obviously. But
Yeah.
with those games, yeah, it's obviously we they felt way bigger to us back then. They felt they had a much bigger wow factor to us.
Yeah.
Maybe it is because
Well,
of like us being kids, and for us our brains are in a certain mindset. We are in a certain mindset, so we experience these things differently. I mean, today, things that are small things in a game. I mean, if you take like me playing Star Citizen now, for example, um, yes, the big scale of the universe, or not universe, let me say system.
solar system.
Yeah, the solar system that you're in, it's like, yeah, okay, that has a wow factor, but we are more we are more amazed by like the smaller details and stuff, as you know, and like lighting reflections, and like small details of how your character interacts with things, how the world interacts with your character and affects your character
Yes.
and your ship. These things are things that we look at, which maybe when we were kids we didn't even know is a thing. But for us, it's not the same wow factor as in terms of, for example, damn, I can walk inside my ship. As a kid, we probably would have been amazed by something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
that's just how we as kids perceive things differently. And I actually want to use this to lead into something else. But if you want to say something,
yeah. Well, just to go back to everything you like said. Well, to touch off on your first point, I definitely do agree. Like you said, that PC pushed quite a few things with games, but I also do disagree with it because I think that um, gap when the PS1 was introduced compared to the old console, which I think was the NES. I can't remember what it was before then. But
NES
a lot
on
of the games
Hyper
that
Master.
came, yeah, but the games that came onto the PlayStation that weren't available on PC or anything like that, they were actually like one of the true first game changers. I think was during that PlayStation 1 era, because you had a lot of games that were on the PlayStation that weren't on PC. Let's take for example, the Crash Bandicoot games, Metal Gear Solid. Those games they pushed the boundaries. They really did. In terms for gaming, that did a lot. But then, like you said, there are certain things that PC propelled and that obviously consoles couldn't do, like real time strategy games, those kinds of games as well. And then as time progressed, PCs just became the main, you know, um, forefront for everything basically. And where console would more or less only can push up in game concepts rather than performance or some kind of other technical feat and so on. But then, yeah, going back into your topic now of the games itself and what we felt as kids, like that is such a massive thing. And I know that you said it's was it because we were kids, but I think even if we were adults back then, like that would be the biggest thing you would know. Like you could not imagine the games that we have today with their scales. So even then, to anyone, an adult back then, that would have still been mind blowing because that was the first time you'd experience it.
It
The
yeah,
first
it,
time
it
you,
it comes down to what you've already seen and what you obviously know games can be. So yeah, being an
yeah,
adult and having played at this point probably at least hundreds of games, you already have an idea of what games can contain with the technology available today. I guess, you
yeah,
know,
yeah. But I think that's a something specific we can even go into is the mindset you had of when you were maybe younger and so on, and you didn't know what were the limitations of games. To
mm,
you, what you saw, you you were amazed, but then you also went a bit further, like, oh, I could go here. I wonder if this game would introduce another larger map later on in the game. Oh, I wonder if
mm.
I could travel here. With games of today, we would already know the map size from the beginning. We would know obvious limitations. We would know, like, okay, they couldn't possibly have made the game include this other extra larger map. The game size files would have been bigger. It would have been long in development. It's just certain things that we didn't really know about when we were younger. I mean, that allowed our imagination to go wherever it went.
It kind of just makes me think of ignorance is bliss because our our knowledge of the limitations of technology today and what games can be today is kind of a thing that is making us not have that wow factor with as many things in games today. So, I mean, it takes a specific kind of person like us. We are people that we look into the small details, we look into the small immersive things, we look into the realistic things that we can pick up in the game, and also once again realistic details. But when it comes to those other things like like map size, well, to be fair, there are so many leaks and things revealed um, about games beforehand, especially map size. If you look at Far Cry, for example, I think I think ever since Far Cry 2, they revealed the map size beforehand. And they already like told the fans, you're now going to be experiencing a 1 square kilometer map, and then the next Far Cry, 2 square kilometer map, double the size of the previous Far Cry game, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So it came
So,
to a point where just like, okay, the map's big, but now we are basically, I don't want to say overthinking, maybe not the correct term, but we are thinking further, and we're like, okay, it's a 4 square kilometer map, fine, but is the map just repetitive? Does the map have
yes,
different biomes? All these things.
yes, that's actually a very good point because now we've reached a point where it's not like, okay, how big the map is. It's how, interactive, how lively is that world? Is it just a map full of things or is it the actual living, breathing world? Like, if I had to go back to San Andreas, which they released now recently, the trilogy, back then, like, that that had everything you want. Like, if you go to a different region, you felt that the cars, the atmosphere, the pedestrians, the activities you could do. You could walk into a random bar in some middle of nowhere town and play one of the arcade machines that were there or pool, and you'd hear, like, small town kind of vibes everywhere. And then you go to one of the bigger cities. You could go to then what was their version of Las Vegas. You could go then gamble. You could see the lights. Like, that was an actual living, breathing world. Then you can take some games from today where they have absolutely massive maps, but it feels just so boring to transverse it and go from one place to another because there's not really anything to see or do there. And I think that point that you made there is actually quite well.
Yeah, definitely. It well, obviously it's also to do with what we are used to. Like I said, um, new like very large maps. They're not something new today. So that's why we are looking at the realism of these maps and details and smaller things that make these maps more amazing, and not just because they're big. Um, But it is interesting when you look back at the old games, when maps or open world games, when they actually started having large maps,
Mm.
even 2D games. So I don't know. I think we talked about this, but I don't know if it changed now. But I think it might still have the record. But the map with the the game with the largest recorded map is Elder Scrolls Daggerfall.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, the second Elder Scrolls entry, and it's not 3D; it's 2D. And that map was huge. When you open the map, I actually played the game, I think last year or something. When you open the map, it's huge. It's a huge map. Obviously, it looks bad. You're just looking at a bunch of jumbled pixels, made that like kind of form something you recognize. It looks like a land mass, but
Right.
it's a super large map. But back then they could get away with it because the map was very repetitive. It was like a random generation in a way, or maybe it was pre-scripted, but either way, a lot of like a lot of the locations, if not most of the locations, were basically copies of one another, which with just different objectives or
Yeah.
maybe different enemies or whatever. I mean, there were so many locations where I walk into the location, then I see the how the trees, well, let me rephrase, how the weird pixelized structures which resemble the shape of trees, how those things looked exactly the same as the previous area, and then they like the main building of entrance or whatever is like exactly the same location in that area relative to where you are, and then it's just repetitive. But because big maps and everything was such a new thing back then, that wasn't something that people would criticize necessarily, because it was just such a wow factor. I mean, today a game like that would not survive. It would just be like, no, it's repetitive, it's boring, blah blah blah. I mean, let's not even get into that, because we know the whole thing that's causing that wow factor to disappear even more when you look at the whole online aspect and how the whole mindset of gamers today and children and teenagers today have changed in how they look at games. But with a game like that, yeah, it won't make it. It'll just be criticized as to
Yeah.
being repetitive. If you just ignore the graphics for a moment, it'll just be like repetitive. Like, yeah, it has a big map, but it's just
Yeah.
repeating
Well,
the same thing.
yeah, I definitely see what you're saying, but I think also one distinct thing there is that they were trying something new. No one had done it before. They were trying to push the boundaries. They were trying to
Exactly.
see whether this sticked. If someone else did that today, not only would it be lackluster, it would be something that's already been done. It's not something they're trying to push the boundaries on because what's the point? It was done before. Unless you're trying to add something new element to it that would add some life to it, you're just trying to copy them. Then at that point,
Yeah, yeah.
Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed? Do you sometimes feel that life is just too much to handle and you cannot bear the weight anymore? Do you sometimes feel like having a mental breakdown? We've all been there. We all experience those days. But what if I tell you that this podcast is sponsored by absolutely no one at all? So you have to deal with your own shit, just like the rest of us. Good luck.
And
well,
like I said, well, actually like a few sentences back, I wanted to say that like I wanted to lead into a next thing kind of, and that's like with us playing the GTA trilogy, that definitive edition now, um, and me playing GTA 3 now for the first time actually, and it being the definitive edition, but it's still obviously they didn't change the whole game. They just basically took the game with a new shader and they reskinned the game, so it's still in a way it definitely still feels like one of those old games. But
definitely.
when you look at like the map size and you look at the repetitive NPCs and you look at the horrible AI and all these things, then you just realize, damn, games games were like a different breed, if I can call it that back then. Like
Yeah, well,
a game back then was like in a whole different class.
Well, you have to remember, like GTA 3 was the first open world, like GTA, and like I think one of the first open world games in general. Um, that was revolutionary, and like you said, I'm playing through it as well, and the scale of the first island is so small, and not
Mm.
only that, like just the mission structures themselves, like from introduction to 10 minutes later, you could have played through 5 missions and
Yeah,
there's no real meat to the content, if I could say it like that. You go into this one place, you meet the guy, he says, okay, just go there and kill this person for me, and that all takes place in a span of 20 seconds. Like those were the mission cutscenes back in the day. you
yeah,
know um, it's I don't know, it's just quite interesting to see. And yeah, like the map size as well. The first island that you start off on GTA 3, it is such a small island. Like, to drive from one end to the other is like just a few seconds, even with like the slowest of cars you could steal. And like you said, repetitive pedestrians and I don't know, back then, like just thinking to myself, like I actually felt like I was in a city back in the time. Like I was driving from one end to the other. Like these things were actually taking me, um, tens of minutes to drive and finish a mission,
it felt,
whereas today I play it and it's a few minutes.
yeah, yeah. It felt huge, but I mean, thinking about the fact that GTA 3 was the very first 3D open world game. When you look at the smaller details and stuff you can do, it kind of amazed me. I thought about this the other day when I was playing it. The fact that it was the very first 3D open world game, and Rockstar gave you things to do, like you could do taxi missions to pick up people and drop them off. You could do the paramedics missions. You could even climb in the train. I mean, yes, the train just went in like a circle around the city, but
Well,
still,
okay. I've got to say, I may be misremembering, but I do not think you could enter the train in the original GTA 3. I'll have to check that because in either I never knew about that from the very first GTA.
Ah, shit.
You know,
Okay.
if I can do a quick Google search here, because I just want to make sure.
I thought they only like changed the controls and stuff to match GTA 5's like modern controls. I didn't think they actually added features.
Hmm. I would just like to make sure because I never remember entering the trains in the original GTA 3.
Hmm.
Um, hmm.
But I mean, the taxi missions and the paramedics missions, that was in the old game.
Yes, yes, no, no, that's like a staple of like the GTA games.
Yeah, but I mean, I can use that as an example. Of it was impressive. It being the very first 3D open world game, and it still had all these activities, all these few activities that you could still do on the side for fun. And oh, I mean,
Right.
hell, if you played GTA back in the day and you don't enjoy just killing random pedestrians, then something is wrong with you.
I think that's just a universal GTA experience.
I mean, okay. To be fair, my first GTA experience was San Andreas, so GTA 3 and Vice City, and I never played it. This is the first time playing GTA 3, and but I loved beating up people with a baseball bat or with a knife, or even just with like fists and whatever, kicking them. When in San Andreas, they would have this bounce if you like hit them on the ground, and it would also like chain. So if you hit, you could like knock over three people on the ground right next to each other, or on top of each other. And then you take the baseball bat and you hit them, but then all three of them like bounce as you hit them, and they become like vending machines that pop out money. That was-
Yeah, no.
I
I
could
mean, that was a classic.
I mean, back in the day, I could do that for hours, and that was on PlayStation 2 on my friend's PlayStation 2. So I never had the game where I could actually do it. Well, I did have the game much later on PC. I downloaded the game, played San Andreas a little bit, but I mean, back in the day, I played it on my friend's PlayStation. But like, yeah, I took up at least 2 hours, and I basically didn't even do any missions. I was just there killing pedestrians and getting my ass
But
handed to me by cops and
but that was just a glory of the games back in the day. My very first GTA was Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories. It's one that came out for PS2 and PSP, and it actually uses the same map as GTA 3. But
Mm.
the very first time experiencing an open world game like that, I've got to say, I think I've finished the main story of that game like 4 or 5 times. And I also did. There were also so many days where I did things exactly like you described. Because one of the things that's also another staple of the GTA games is that you could pick up a hooker and you had to drive to a secluded area. And obviously, then the car would stop humping and you'd get
Yes.
life back. And then you would have to pay money. And then as soon as she got out, you'd get out of a baseball bat, kill her, and take your money back. Like, that was just a GTA experience. And doing stuff like that, riding around the city, doing that, then going on to get taxi missions, or even trying to do funny Easter eggs or whatnot.
And don't forget
And
the stunt jumps.
and the stunt jumps as well. And actually, something that I don't think I have today than what I had as a child was just my memory and imagination to make my own story with the open world. It was like I could go make my own fun and my own narrative and so on.
Oh yeah, you could enjoy like the taxi missions so much more because you like kind of have a story connected to it and everything.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think I think that might also be a personality kind of thing. But to me, like even if I did like the cop missions, I would be like, I'm a hard-boiled cop. I've been here for 20 years on the force. This is my retirement day. That kind of things. You
The
just
funny
build a
thing is,
story.
what you're talking about is something that I think is a thing with being an adult and being a kid, not just in games. For example, when I think back, me playing with BB guns and playing quote unquote war when I was a kid.
In real life, basically, not like through a game.
Yeah, yeah, I would like with like BB guns in real life, whatever. When I think about back then, and I think about the ideas I had, but then I compare it to my ideas today. For example, I find myself thinking about this every now and then. When I was a kid, I liked, for some reason, I liked the idea, but this probably came from games. It was an ideas that probably I obtained from existing games that I've played. But I like the idea of having a gun shop that I control. And usually I did this when I had a friend over, obviously. And then
Right.
I would go through the effort of literally drawing money. I would like take stacks of paper, cut it into more or less um more or less money bill sizes, and I would like draw on them and like make it $100 or whatever you want to call it. And then I would actually work out prices and price each gun. I would pack them out on my bed, and then my friend would come in, and then for them to get money they have to go do a mission or something, and then I would give them money, but I'm also the store owner, so it's a bit confusing. But then they would come in, give me money, and buy a gun, and then like, I have the gun, and then they go run outside and go shoot some more imaginary people. And that was funny. And that was fun. I loved that. I was like, oh shit, it's so cool. It's so cool having a gun store and selling stuff and giving prices to guns and blah blah blah. I mean, my gun collection back then consisted of. I remember I got a box of BB gun parts, and I what I had was loose BB gun parts, sellotape, and scissors. And basically, I built like pistols and stuff made out of mixed and matched BB gun parts and everything. So I had like
Right,
a,
right.
b- a mini collection of guns. Some of them looked like working BB guns, but they were not working at all. But they looked quote unquote cool, and I just love that thing. And now thinking the thing you just said about your imagination and everything, I have now being an adult, I have the knowledge now. I have the increased mental capacity to think of better ideas, thinking of, oh, imagine if I have a gun store now, I can do it this way, or I can actually do this, or I can I don't know, I can print fake money, actual money, whatever. But all these things, and then you get back to, yeah, but you don't have either the time or you don't have that same motivation to play as a kid. And obviously you're an adult, you don't really want to be seen doing that. Who are you going to get to play it with you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you just call me out of the blue one day and it's like, do you want to play pretend gun store? Like, my first question is, how rough was your work day, man?
You'll
Like,
just be like, you'll just be like, listen, yeah, man, I'm too poor even to buy guns with fake money.
I'm just gonna, yeah, no, I'm too poor to afford that attention even. Like, let's not even go there.
Mention
Uh,
to do a imaginary gun store. No, shut up. But yeah, it is interesting when you
well,
when you say these things
w-
about playing games back as a kid with your
yeah, well,
imagination and everything. It's different. I mean, today you can make it more funny as an adult with like you've perfected or you actually understand the concept of accents. So you would be, if you take for example when we play online and we play like we played like World War II game like Enlisted, or even like Project Reality, more modern combat, and we are playing as the Russians. Then we go on like a whole thing where we're talking to each other with Russian accents, and it's as if we are actual
all
comrades,
Soviets, yes.
in the fighting for the Soviet army, and we would make it funny and everything. But yeah, as kids we didn't like understand. We couldn't do accents. Maybe I don't remember being able to do accents as a
Well,
kid.
I think like if you do more of like a mocking thing, because kids were just like you mocked the person instead of like you're actually just trying to role play the Soviets of the day. You're just trying to mock the accent. Like I think that's something I saw from a lot of kids playing the Call of Duty days. Like they
Yeah,
just
true.
mock the accent.
Yeah, true.
But
But
you know,
my stupid ass would have probably been something more along the lines of, instead of "Da comrade, zdravstvuyte," I would probably be more like very
I think
immature.
you, I think you would have gotten a lot of hate then.
Look at me, I am Russian.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like also just another kid mindset. But like before we delve into this tangent, I just like want to, give like my own example of like when you were talking about, playing your when you were young as opening your own gun store and something like that. Um, Me and my cousin and my younger brother. Now, when we used to play when we were younger, we had like a small area outside the house. Like it was actually quite small. Like if you think of just like a normal lopper size that people would have today, would have like a braai under or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just a small lopper, nothing massive or anything like that. But just
Okay.
take the area underneath that, and it was like it was paved basically with bricks,
Yeah.
and we had that area to play with. I remember like us having like one of the tables outside. We would set that somewhere to the corner. We'd get cardboard boxes, and we had like these toy cars, not electric or anything, but I'm sure you must know them. Like these small green cars. You have to like use your feet to push the car basically while you're on it. One of those old toy cars,
Oh, so you
and we
mean
had
wait? You mean you stand on it with one foot?
no. You sit on it, but and there's like a steering wheel, but you use your feet to like you're walking.
Oh yes. Okay.
You had a thing like that, and then you also had like a toy bike, but like again, not like with pedals or anything. One of those old like black plastic bikes, but then
Yeah.
again, you have to use your feet to push.
Yeah.
And then we basically created our own mini city back in the day there, and we would have our own stores. You want to be the policeman, you want to be the ambulance driver. We'd have things like that. Even be like the mechanic. I remember like my cousin would used to love being the mechanic. And so we'd have like in that small area of space, it was not anything large, and then again it was our imagination. Like hell, at one point I think we even started implementing the day-night cycle. So we'd have like someone there on their car. First we'd always have to sort of, you have to go buy the car with your money,
Mm.
from wherever you were working. You buy the car, you gotta go fix it at the mechanic. Sometimes one of us would be owning a store and would be like the police officer. But nothing more than just having those tables, some cardboard boxes for like the stores, and just those, that one bike and that one car. We would have the whole afternoon of pretending to be in a city and living our own lives and so on. And just
Oh man.
our imagination could let us have fun with basically anything. You could give a kid a stick and they would have the best time of their lives.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely. I mean, that was a constant thing with me. If we would go anywhere in like the wilderness or anything, or like when we go fishing next to like a lake or something, my dad would, before I was interested in fishing myself, I would be on the hunt for a stick, and if a stick has any kind of slightly almost 90-degree
I
end,
see where this is
then it's
going.
like, oh
Yes.
yeah, that's a gun. If that stick had another perpendicular branch that was perfect in terms of it being like a foregrip or another grip as a gun, oh, you found a perfect gun.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then there were actually times where like I would like sellotape sticks together to make a gun. Or hell, even when I didn't have sticks, I'd sometimes just take paper and I'd sellotape that around, and then like sellotape the grip and then the handle, and then if you were
Oh
actually
man.
feeling daring that day, you try to make the trigger.
Yeah.
It was just the fun that you could have as a kid. It was amazing, and I remember. Well, this is now outside my grandparents' house because they used to own a store, and in between the store and the house they owned later on, there was quite a big area in between that they could walk. And they were building something, so they had about a pile of sand at one stage, at one corner of that large area,
Okay.
and right across from that other area there was just a small patch of grass. And once again, me and the same cousin mentioned from before, we would play like war. Like, someone would hide behind that sand dune basically, and someone would be on the other side of the grass, and we'd be like, we didn't have any BB guns unfortunately at the time, but we'd have sticks so on there, and we're like pretending to shoot the enemy from the other side or sniping. And hell, as a kid, you were competitive. It's like, no, I shot you first. Like, no, I shot you first before you shot me. I missed. I dodged it. it's You took everything so seriously, but your imagination let you do anything that you want. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you
that is
forgot one though. You forgot the
which
classic.
is
You forgot the classic. I shot you first, and you're like, no, but you didn't see that I actually have a shield.
oh my soul. Yeah, as kids, your imagination would go there as well. Like, no, I have a power up. I have extra armor.
Or just a magic. No, I used a magic spell. I'm a wizard or something. I can use magic and I stop the bullets. I am fine.
Oh, yeah, okay. But I gotta say, when you start bringing magic into a game that doesn't involve magic, that's when you know the game is coming to an end, and you're gonna transition into something else.
Yeah, no, definitely it was like that.
But I think that's something I really do miss from being a child. It's just being able to have fun. Well, first of all, having the time to have that fun, but also
Okay.
just having that kind of fun with wherever you are. You were content and you were happy with what you had.
Yeah, you didn't give a damn of what people thought. You pick up that stick and you ran like into the trees, shooting who knows what. Nobody knows what you were shooting. You knew what you were shooting because you could see it in your head. Um,
Well, you see, yeah, exactly. But you know what? One thing also is other kids also knew what you were shooting because sometimes other kids would just join in as well, and then
yeah,
you didn't have to explain the game to them. They was just there and busy
they,
with it.
yeah, exactly. A kid just sees you running and making like weird shooting sounds. He runs in. He picks up a stick that kind of resembles a gun, and all he asks you is, "What are we shooting?"
Not only that, sometimes he could go two ways. He could either go like, you're in a squad, like, okay, enemies, where are they, or he could be the other enemy trying to shoot you. It's good to go either way, but you know what? They jump right in and you're gonna have fun.
Yeah. Damn, it was something else. And you're actually making me think about something else that I enjoyed doing a lot. Um, Also when I was like a kid, but up until like my early teenage years even. Um, so I had a lot of like army men and those toy army men that you can actually almost like action figures where you can put guns into their hands and stuff like
Oh,
that.
like figurines.
Yeah, you could put them into vehicles. You can like drive around the vehicles.
Yeah.
A lot of it was obviously mostly like military army men kind of stuff. I also had the classic plastic small green army men, which is just like static figures. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like
I think like everyone knows those ones. Like the ones
yeah,
from Toy Stories basically.
yeah, exactly. I had those as well, but I did a lot of those kinds of things. Used my imagination a lot to make war scenes, to do like basically play combat whatever between them and all that. Um, but not just that, I also had a lot of bits and bobs in terms of just all kinds of toys of from those kinds of things of like miniature stuff like or like I mean like things like from a big mixed weird collection of like just stuff from those kinds of action figures and
Yeah.
stuff, and also like off-brand Legos and all kinds of stuff from just mixed, just like really mixed random shit from all kinds of toy sets and everything. And then one thing that I definitely loved doing, which was inspired by games of back in the day, when I started for the first time, when I was introduced to Need for Speed, I got a love for Need for Speed and the whole dynamic of how it works. And my very first Need for Speed that I ever played was, I think it was Need for Speed Underground 1.
No, going old
And
school.
yeah, I played Need for Speed Underground 1 on like an old PC at a friend's house. Like they live far from us, whatever, but at their house, and I enjoyed it so much. And Underground 1 and Underground 2, they differ a lot.
Oh yeah, no. Underground 2 was a game changer.
But not just that, the Underground 1 didn't feel like the same vibe as Underground 2 in terms of the theme and the whole immersion, or whatever you want to call it. It didn't feel like Underground racing, you know?
Yeah.
So Underground 1 was the very first Need for Speed game I played. Underground 2 was the very first Need for Speed game I owned and then played.
Right.
Underground 2 opened up a whole world of um of basically racing and and an interest in racing games and the whole cop chasing you as a criminal dynamic and all that. And then it got to up to the very first most in Need for Speed Most Wanted game, which just basically
Oh.
solidified that, and
Yes.
that was just another wow factor. And then what I started doing up until early in my teenage years, almost middle, I would like take all these bits and bobs and stuff I just told you, and I would build like a quote unquote city, but it wasn't like that scale city. But I would build roads, and I would build roads with barriers and random bits and bobs and everything. And I had like a shitload of those cheap, rubbish little toy cars, you know.
Yes.
Um, it was like rubbish toy cars. But anyway, I had quite a few of them. You would buy like sets of them, then you get like 50 cars for cheap. But it was literally like cheap plastic trash. But
Right.
you played with it nonetheless, because we all know Hot Wheels were and still is damn expensive. So there's no way
As is
there's,
tradition.
there is no way my toy car collection could have been replaced by Hot Wheels. If my parents could afford that, I would probably be not working now and living in a mansion and probably making TikToks.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have off-brand Legos.
Exactly. So
Legos and Hot Wheels, man. You were rich.
yeah, then you were rich, man. But so then I would build these racetracks, and I would go so far as to taking like I had like actual plastic fences, like it looked like fences, which was out of some or other army toy set. I don't know. But then I would like make the shortcuts that I would see in the game, and then I would make rules and say that all the blue cars are cop cars, and then I would be driving around the city,
Uh,
obviously the nicest car, which was like I think the one of the only two Hot Wheels I fucking owned. then I would be driving that car, and then the cops would like be chasing me, and then I would like take a shortcut and break through the fence, which I did they put there for a reason, and then I built a ramp, and then I would like ramp into the street back, and I'd be driving there, and I
would
just loved there on my carpet in my room, building this whole
uh,
basically
I've
let's call it a small town, because let's be fair, it's not like a city size, and
yeah,
then
but I've
shortcuts and ramps and everything like I would see in Need for Speed. And I think that ties in with our topic of the effect that those games back in the day had on us, and how they just put our
yes,
imaginative gears in, just made them basically
it
work.
shaped us. It
Yes.
shaped us. It basically shaped where our imagination went outside of those games. And I've got to ask, like, because I did something similar, but I didn't go to that great of extent of setting up like my network of roads and whatnot, and even fences. But even when I was playing with my toy cars, and I had like in a mind, like, okay, this car's chasing me. I'm gonna do this cool trick over this ramp. Yeah, I do it. I land. I stop. Then I stop. Let me redo that. I want to do it better. Did you ever do something like that as a kid? You redid that thing you just did
Yes.
because you want to do it
Yes, I
better.
did. But you know, with me, it was sometimes because of the environment. So I told you
Uh,
I would be playing on a carpet, right?
right.
So we had those old, rough, rugged carpets. We didn't have like smooth, whatever carpets. It was like old, rough, rugged carpet, like the grandma carpets.
Yes.
And sometimes with those small cars, the wheel would like get stuck on like a piece of wool or whatever on the carpet. And I would be like, the cop car would be chasing me, and then I would do like a cool drift, like I see in Need for Speed. And then I would try to drift, and then my car, the wheel gets stuck on one of those pieces
Oh,
of carpet, and then the drift just the car just barrel rolls out of like out from between my fingers or something, and then the car rolls, and I'm like, "Oh, that was stupid." And then it's literally like
Yeah.
I pressed I pressed like rewind. I would reposition the cop car to where it was and take the car
Yes.
back, and I'm like, no, let's redo that drift. And then
Yes.
it's like I press play, and I'm like, yeah, now this is how we drift. And then I would like go over the ramp where I didn't choose the ramp before or whatever, and make it cooler. And then I would just be like playing, just like basically playing a scene from Need for Speed in my head while playing cars on my carpet.
That's the thing. During then, you had a scene going on in your head. You were looking through different kind of glasses, you know,
Oh, yeah,
like you were imagining a whole bigger world and so on. But
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah, it was just so fun. But I was like I brought it up. I did that thing of like having to redo the scene or whatnot, even if nothing particularly happened, like a wheel getting stuck on a piece of carpet or whatnot. Like
Mm.
even if I was playing and I was like, wait a minute, nah, that didn't feel like as awesome as it should have. Then let's redo it. Let's redo a bit more of this. And I think
Yeah,
that's something you see. That's something I understand of kids more nowadays is their repetitiveness of to do things over and over and over and over, no matter how many times.
mm,
You know,
yeah,
it's just like I don't know. It's just different. But I actually just want to go a bit back to that whole thing of when you said games influenced our imagination and so on.
mm,
And something that I have today that I absolutely love in games today that was also shaped or that I discovered back then, but it shaped me a lot. And you can use Underground 2 as an example, or even Most Wanted, is customization.
oh yeah,
Customization and the freedom you had in games. That was one of the best things ever. It, Making your own car to however you like, driving a different car every different race, being able to put the decals or whatnot wherever you want on the car, having your own unique car, like that was so amazing for anything. Like even take other games where you could like dress a character in whichever outfit, different kinds of shirts, even like the old Elder Scrolls or Fallout where you could still like customize the appearance of your
yeah,
character and so
yeah,
on. Like that was amazing. And I remember even when I used to play like army battles or so on, I would also like to try to dress as a specific character or something.
yeah.
Like having some kind of customization, quote unquote, in your real life, um, whatever you played as a child, like that is something that was definitely influenced by games as well. And it's something I love absolutely today in games as well, when they give you that freedom for customization. And not just a set limit like, okay, you can choose between 3 or 4 haircuts, but like a proper range of customization to do what you want.
Yeah, and in terms of customization, okay, more specifically car customization, for me the best Need for Speed game, but only in terms of customization, may be um, Need for Speed Carbon, because Need for Speed Carbon started introducing the ability to edit your decals and where you place them and stuff. And
Was that not something you could do though in Underground 2? Sorry, where you could
no,
place the decal on a certain position?
no, in Underground, in Underground 2, you couldn't move the decal. You could only like place it at a fixed position.
Oh wow, because Carbon, if as far as I remember, was the latest of all those classic Need for Speeds. Carbon was like 2007.
Yeah, no, Carbon was the very first one. You can edit your decals and put layers upon layers of decals and make your own, basically your own livery. And
Wow.
another thing is, in Carbon is the very first and maybe I think the last Need for Speed. I don't know why they removed it, where you can actually physically edit your car parts to a small degree, but you could still. For example, there was an extra slider that would determine the size of, for example, how the middle part of your bumper splits, or how the spikes of your rims split. You could have a
Wow.
slider that adjusts that. That's something that stood out for me as well in Carbon.
I don't even remember that, and I did play Carbon, but I can't even remember that aspect. But yeah, maybe it was just not a much used feature.
But Also, I think that the majority of people the majority of people do not want to spend too much time in customization. I mean, even people who you would assume might be creative do not like customization. Um, Mark, for example, Markiplier, he hates customization. He does not want to spend half an hour or an hour in a menu determining how his character should look, even if it's a character for like the rest of a 60-hour game. He doesn't like it. Whereas
Oh, he
we,
does.
whereas we would sit there for the hour and make our character how we want that character to look.
Yes, yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's something that actually comes down to completely different playstyles as well. Like Markiplier, he hates it, but also if he had to, he tries to make it as funny as possible, which just may be a thing for like on-camera playthroughs. But there are people who just have that kind of playstyle. Like if they have to create a character or whatnot, they'd make the absolutely most ridiculous character or whatnot. And then you get people who I'd say would fall more into our range, would put very much great detail into the customization,
Yeah.
a bit more seriously, I mean. And I'd spend quite a lot of time in the character customization menu. I remember with Skyrim, the first time I got it, like my character was going to be very specific, and I think I was there for half an hour the very first time creating my character.
Oh yeah, no, me definitely. I mean, definitely also a thing. I mean, I think there are actually games. I can't remember what game it was, but I remember there was a game where you actually get an achievement for the time you spend in a character customization menu.
That doesn't actually surprise me. And you know what? The games can actually implement this quite well. Like I've recently been playing Fallout 4, and I like the way they introduced the customization at the beginning. You're in front of the mirror, your partner's behind you, and so on. You're looking at yourself in the mirror, making comments as you change your details and so on. Like
Yeah.
even that is such a nice touch, and I really do enjoy that.
Yeah, if they actually add an immersion factor to the character
Yes, an immersion.
customization, it definitely does a lot for the game. For example, not just character customization, but also your character attributes and skills. To expand on that, Fallout 4 made it where you choose your initial special skills, your skill points, where you have to finalize your vault registration in the
Yes.
story. And then the guy would be like, yeah, so just let me confirm your information, and then it takes you to the actual skills select screen for your initial skills.
Well,
That's a really good implementation of basically finalizing your and customizing your character before the game starts without breaking immersion and making you feel like, oh yeah, I'm actually it's almost like he's just remembering who he is and now I'm determining his skills.
and if I'm not mistaken, I think in Fallout 3 you did a test, kind of like a general aptitude test in the beginning, and from there it gave you kind of like a base, depending on your answers, like a base. The same thing. It gave you the stats and where you could put your points in, but it kind of gave you like what your answers were. It gave you a base, like okay, here's where your points will be in. Obviously, you could go back and change it, but they also tried to do that straight from Fallout 3. I do not think the actual character customization was as quite detailed as in Fallout 4, but that was already. But with regards to points, they were already trying to make it quite immersive already from Fallout 3, which I think was just a very nice aspect of the Fallout games. And
Yeah.
yeah, Fallout 4 not reintroduced it, but just reapplied it, and it was actually quite well done. It was immersive. I definitely enjoyed it, and yes, I it's just one of the main reasons why I love Bethesda's games.
Yeah, but it was a very good way of doing it in Fallout 3 where you actually had to answer questions and write the test and then it determined what it was actually your suggested, I think.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. Suggested.
Yeah, they suggest that yeah, you according to the test you were strong in this and this or these two areas. This is like the skill set or whatever we suggest. Um
Yeah. And sorry, before you continue with that, I just want to say something that PC introduced was, I think, actually mods, where sometimes you could have in the beginning, if I remember correctly, it was a mod where it would just introduce kind of a bit of different questions and so on. We tried to make it like an actual general aptitude test, and that's actually, and this could be a topic for another day because it's something that could span a whole hour or so.
Yeah.
But it's this thing of imagination and whatnot. Like modding can bring that to life as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, just to quickly touch on it, that one gay, the one guy, sorry, the one guy I'm following. No, he's not gay. The one guy I'm following, he
Okay, you can continue talking. I'll be laughing off camera.
that
Off
blue
mic, sorry.
that Blue Drake 42 Blue Drake 52 guy. So he has this game that he's developing, helping to develop whatever called Operation Harsh Doorstop, which he's trying to make basically just like Squad, um, with also like Battlefield elements. The other day, he even went as far as to say that he is making this game to compete with Battlefield because he is against certain things that the gaming industry is doing. Because one thing, for example, he wants to release this game for free, no microtransactions or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's going to be a free game. You're going to be able to implement bots, which is already a thing. Although the game is still in alpha, it's not an actual released game yet. The
Yeah,
game is
and I'm
actually it's very far at this stage. The graphics look almost as good as Squad, or basically the same as Squad. Um, but yeah, still has a lot of work to do. But yeah, he really is against what the industry is doing today and the online aspect and all that. He hates the fact that he hates the fact that to play a game against just AI, you have to be online. He hates that about
no.
Battlefield, for
Yes.
example. Battlefield has bots, but you can't play against the bots offline. You have to play the game when online. So that's one thing he hates. He also is going to make his game offline, like available offline to play against bots. But anyway, that's like delving off into it. Basically, what I want to say is he wants to make that game as moddable as possible, and even now you can join the development by making mods, and then he can use those mods and maybe use them for ideas and then implement the stuff into the game. So yes, mods definitely push the envelope and can make your imagination a reality in games. Um, Provided obviously those mods can be put into the game and they work, and or they even just allowed by the developer to be put into the game or whatever. Depends on the situation, but
Yes.
yeah,
But
the mods really have been game changers. I mean, if you look at Project Reality started out as a mod. It became a standalone game actually, where you don't even need Battlefield 2 to play it anymore.
yes, and I mean the things you could do in Project Reality are actually quite insane. Like the detail that go into
Oh yeah,
the
definitely,
game is it's insane.
definitely.
And yeah, if this okay, to go off onto I think one of the last tangents that we could have, given our time, but just to touch again on that modding aspect, like so many people have changed quite a lot of games to something completely different that you can have fun with community. But one of the main things that I think that Blue Drakes hates about about EA, or what I guess is one of the things he hates, is how corporate companies are kind of just ruining a lot of these things for the sake of profit and how much they can sell, and the online aspect, like always being online, having to be online, that must be like an
Yeah,
anti-piracy measure, for example.
yeah,
But I want to take the recent thing with GTA. Now, the trilogy of GTA has been around for quite a while, obviously, because it was 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. San Andreas being the latest of the 3, with it being released in 2004. And modding for those games, or specifically San Andreas, have been absolutely huge. I think aside from like the Fallout and Skyrim games, it might possibly be one of the most next modded games.
yeah. I mean,
And one of the
we
things is
talked about
obviously
we talked about how there are mods that make the trilogy look better than than these official definitive editions
Yes,
actually look.
and that's actually something I wanted to touch upon. Is there were mods already that made it look so much more better, added so much more functionality. But Rockstar, or rather, let me say Take Two as well, the publishers, they went and tried to take down those mods. Specifically because the trilogy was going to release and they didn't want anything to interfere with their profits.
Wow.
And that's insane. And I don't know if you remember from like back in the day when Bethesda tried to launch their mod creation club or something, where you actually had to pay for mods then. Like
Yeah.
everything is so profit driven nowadays. Like that imagination that you want in games or that you have a kid is just trying to be killed off of profit.
Yeah.
Microtransactions, name it, whatever you want, just name it, and it's trying to be killed off of profit. Hell, take away from games, anything, everything's trying to be killed of profits nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. And the sad thing is the majority of the players, that's like the games that are being pushed because of profit. It's what these players want, and they are in the majority, and for that reason, it's not just going to stop. Because if you look at, for example, your Call of Duty fanboys, but the ones that only play the game for multiplayer. I mean, you get guys that they buy Call of Duty, they would pay like the full $60 price tag for a Call of Duty game, but they never even start the campaign.
Well, I mean, and then Call of Duty recently has just not given a shit about their campaigns at all. So, if somebody buying multiplayer nowadays, it's expected. Specifically, the developers expect that. Like, you only buy it for the multiplayer.
Mm.
Like, back in the day, there would at least be some expectation for you to play the campaign. Nowadays, there's just full on no multiplayer.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. But I don't have a problem if people just want the multiplayer. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem if those people start dissing. Sorry, start dissing single player and story and those kinds of game modes. They diss that or whatever because they don't understand it and they don't appreciate it. And then they just say like, nah, the campaign is stupid. Why would you play the campaign? There's no competitive element or whatever. And then, yeah.
Okay, and you know what? Let me introduce a hot take here. It's something we've talked about extensively in the past. I think you do agree with me on this, but we are very much in the minority. But it's gonna be definitely a hot take. But in Assassin's Creed, the majority of players who cry that Desmond's story was boring and that the modern day story should be removed. I absolutely hate that, and I loathe that they got that done. The modern day story from Assassin's Creed was one of my favorites that I followed. I loved the Assassin's Creed story. Not
Yeah.
that I didn't love the actual, playing as Altair or Ezio, but I actually loved the lore behind the modern day story, the animus. And
Yeah.
I could see that we were obviously in the minority, and everyone was just so glad in Assassin's Creed 3 when Desmond finally died. And you could see they tried to remove the modern day story as time progressed.
Hmm. Yeah, damn. That's also something to think about.
Yes, no, it is.
Yeah,
But
crazy
so,
mods with all the mods there out there. It's insane the mods that you get, mods that overall the overhaul a game to such a point where it's like it's a whole new different game, and the
yes.
developers themselves, they can maybe, but they don't even want to or think about, you know, making something same quality as the mod or whatever.
And I think that basically wraps up what we've wanted to talk about today. Um, if anyone listening has or is still here at this point and you've listened to everything and you haven't skipped through anything to get to this point, thank you so much. This is obviously a work in progress. We try to talk about everything that relates to us, that could relate to you, that could relate to anybody, such as our childhood memories today and the games that we've played back then. So please let us know whether what you enjoyed about this podcast. What were moments that maybe you'd wanted something different. or that you think we could change so that it could make it more enjoyable for you. Please let us know down, or well, on whichever platform you're listening to. Let us know about your thoughts about the podcast, and even if you have other topics that you think that you would like us to talk about, please do let us know. And thank you so much for listening. And well, until next time.
Yeah, we're open to criticism. So if you have any ideas for us, you can share them. If you have anything to share from like your olden days of playing games back in the day, then yeah, you can comment that below as well. And if you enjoyed the podcast, yeah, leave a like and give us suggestions. I mean, there are a wide range of topics that we don't mind discussing that probably falls into our areas of interest. So yeah, mention that as well.
Yeah, and yes, so and let us know whether you agree with what we said today. You disagree with anything we've said? Well, if you do, shut up. But no, honestly, do let us know about it. And until next time, to steal from Distractable, podcast out.